everyone, today I'm going to show you how I made this cute little basket to have in my sewing room to just store some fabrics and other little notions. I did put some handles on the end, but you could make it without the handles, that's entirely up to you, or you could put them on the sides. But anyways, let me walk you through how I did this. So the first thing you're going to need is you're going to need two pieces of fabric for your outer, and these measure 12.5 by 7.5. And then I have two pieces that are for the handles. These are 4 by 8 inches. You could use them the same color as the lining or as the outer, or do whatever you want, different color. And then for the lining, you're going to also need two pieces that also measure 12.5 by 7.5. And then I have two pieces of heavyweight interfacing. This is an iron-on, like fusible, also 12.5 by 7.5. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out my squares to box my corners. So I have my outer two pieces together here. I just made sure that everything was lined up nicely so that I could do them both at the same time. I'm just going to take my little ruler here and I'm going to draw a square that is 2 inches by 2 inches from outside edge to outside edge here, as you can see. Normally I would iron on my interfacing before I cut out my corners, but I forgot to do that, so we're just going to go this way, and this works as well. But if you would prefer to do it that way, you could. All right, once I have my squares drawn, I'm just going to take a pair of scissors, and then I'm going to very carefully cut along those lines to cut out my squares. I guess one bonus of not having the interfacing on here is these little pieces of fabric can just go into my crumb bucket, and I can use them for a different project. If the interfacing was on there already, it would be a little bit harder to use it in a different project. So now we're just going to repeat the same steps with the lining fabric as well. I have them both layered here, right sides together, so that they're ready to be sewn together and I don't have to move them around. So now to do the interfacing, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take one piece and lay it on top and use that as my template to cut out those corners. That way it will be the same. And here I thought I was being very proactive and putting my piece on there, and then I realized I had the wrong way on. I'm just glad that I saw that before I ironed it on, because otherwise that would have been, well, ruined. So you're just going to want to follow your manufacturing instructions that are on your interfacing label. Mine didn't have a label on there, so I'm just going to do it the way it normally is done with the ones that I buy. And then while I'm over here at the pressing station, I'm also going to be getting my handles ready. And to do that, I'm just going to fold them in half the long ways, as you can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to kind of crease it with my iron. And then I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to use that crease as a guide and fold in my sides and give that a good press, because I want to fold them together. You could put some interfacing in here if you wanted to make them a little bit stiffer, but I didn't want to. I just wanted it like this. I feel like this is enough for me, but that's entirely up to you. And once I've creased both sides, or yeah, iron them, I'm just going to fold it in half again, and then I'm going to give it a really good press. And then that way it's all ready for me when I go to the sewing machine, and I can just top stitch that. And I'm just going to throw some clips on there just to hold it in place while I do the next ones and work on the next steps before I get to the sewing machine. So these are all ready to be top stitched, and I will be doing them 1/8 of an inch from each edge. So I'm going to take my two outer pieces and I'm going to lay them right sides together, being careful to line everything up nice and neatly. And you could pin it in place here if you wanted to, but I prefer wonder clips. So I'm just going to clip on all the sides that I will be sewing along. That way, well, it's kind of a reminder, because we only want to sew along the sides and along the bottom right now. Then I'm just going to do the exact same thing to the lining fabric. Here I'm just going to be marking a spot that I want to leave open so that I can turn everything right sides out later on. And we're just going to do the exact same thing as I did with the other ones, pop some clips on there, and that way it'll all be held in place while I head over to the sewing machine. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to top stitch all my handles here, and I'm going about a 1/8 of an inch from the edge. You just want to go as close as you can. And I'm going to be doing both sides. That way not only will it be held together, but it'll look a little bit more cohesive. So once I'm done the one side, I'm just going to turn it around and do the exact same thing down the other side. And then once I'm done top stitching my handles, then I will move on to my other parts, and I'm going to be sewing those together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure that I backstitch at the beginning and at the end of each stitch line, and also making sure that I remember to leave that opening on the lining fabric so that we can turn everything right side out later on once it's all sewn together. So my handles are ready, and now we're just going to start boxing these corners. As you can see, I sewed everything with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and on this one, on the lining fabrics, I left an opening on the bottom. Mine's about 3 inches. You can do whatever size seems to work best for you. You just want to leave it big enough so that you're not ripping any stitches while you're doing that. So to box the corners, you just want to kind of squish these corners together. And then I'm going to do my best to line up those two seams there as good as I can. And then I'm going to just throw some clips on there to hold it in place. And I did just finger press my seams open. That way it'd be a little bit less bulk than if I had them all together on one side. If you know what I mean, because it's just so many layers. So pressing them open will reduce bulk. So I'm just going to repeat the same process on all of the corners, and then I'm going to head over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance as well, making sure that I backstitch at the beginning and at the end. And if you're enjoying this video, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up. That does help the YouTube algorithm push my videos out to more people and helps me grow my channel, and I really do appreciate that. So I have the ends sewn together now, so we are ready to move on to the next step. If you don't want to add handles, then you can just skip this step and move on to the next one. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be making some marks so that I get my handles evenly spaced out. So I'm going to take my little ruler here and I'm going to line my edge up with my seam. And then I'm going to find my 2-inch line and I'm just going to make a little mark there. And then same thing, 2 inches from the seam to the left and to the right. And I'm going to do that on both ends. That way I can just have a little bit of a guide, and I'm doing it on the inside because, well, then you won't be able to see it, but I can still use these marks to help me place the handles properly. All right, so now we're going to take our outer layers and we're going to turn it right sides out so that we have the pretty sides facing out. I'm not just going to be using my fingers here to push out the corners to make it look all nice. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We're going to crunch it up again anyways. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my handles and I'm just going to find my mark that I made on the inside there. And I'm going to line the outer edge up with my mark. Here, let me get this in the right camera view here. I hope you can see that. I'll pull this up a little bit. But there, you can see the outer edge is lined up with my little mark that I have there. And I'm just going to use a clip and clip that in place. And then I'm going to turn it and do the exact same with the other side. You want to make sure that you're not twisting it here. You just want to hold it straight down and then turn it. Don't twist it because otherwise then your handle is going to be all twisty. I'm going to do the same thing here. The outside edge of my handle, I'm going to line it up with my little line there and then clip it into place. And then I'm just going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to do a basting stitch just to hold it in place so it's a little bit easier when I want to put it together with the lining. All right, so I have them all basted on. So now it is time to sew this together with our lining fabrics. So with the outer layers being right sides out and the lining still being wrong sides out, I'm just going to take it like this and then just shove it into your lining. And then we're just going to line up our top edges there and make sure that everything's lined up nicely. It takes a little bit finagling sometimes. And then you just want to make sure that your handles are in there and that they're not sticking out because, well, we need them on the inside. So I'm just going to find my end seams there and I'm just going to line those up. Again, trying to open up those seams to reduce bulk. I'm going to pop some clips on there to hold it into place. And then we will be ready to go and sew this together and then turn it right sides out. Here I did not do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Here I did more like a 3/8. As you can see here, it's a little bit wider. So we're just going to go to that opening that we left on the lining and reach in there and then just carefully pull the inside layer out. We don't want to rip any of those stitches that we have there. So we just want to pull it out and then just kind of tuck everything into place where it needs to be. So just push the lining in. And this one here, you just got to use your fingers to kind of roll the lining inside so that you can get a nice clean edge there. And I will be using an iron to press it here. It just gets a little bit crisper and looks a little bit nicer if you do that. And then once you've done that, you have some options here. You could just top stitch it here now to hold it all in place and then close up that opening and you would be done. But I want mine a little bit different. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to fold over my edge and I'm going to fold it over about 1 inch. And I'm just going to do a rough fold first, and then I'm going to take my little ruler and just kind of go around gauging it and checking it to make sure that it's all even because, well, I want it to look nice. And because I did the rolled edge or hem here, I guess you want to call it, I have to put my handles up too, but I'll show you how I did that. So once I've checked it to make sure that it is 1 inch, I'm just going to use my Wonder clips and put some clips there again. That will just keep things from shifting around while I wait to go to the sewing machine. And I'm just going to go all the way around. Once I have that all clipped in, it's time to put my handles up. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to lift them up and try to make them as straight as I can. And then I'm just going to move a clip over or put a clip there to hold it in place. And then I'm going to take this all over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew it down. So now I'm just going to follow the edge of this lip and sew it down and do a little tacking stitch to hold it all in place. And then I also need to close up that opening, which you can do by machine or hand. I did machine. All right, so these are the two baskets that I've made. The blue one is for myself, and then the black and gray feathered one, that one is for my sister. She needed something for a giveaway that she's doing. But anyways, so like you could use these to store like little fat quarter bundles in them or other little notions. And I'll probably use mine to store all my cutters and little rulers and stuff in and my pens so that I'm not always losing them. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video and thank you so much for stopping by, and until next time.